an intersection in Arlington, a city close to Washington, D.C. What seems to be a normal sidewalk is not just any sidewalk for Nadia Conyers. The fifth-generation Arlingtonian is walking the same route her ancestors took many years ago. And thanks to a unique monument in the ground, their path will not be forgotten. The so-called stumbling stones remind of the once enslaved people living in the area. For descendants like Nadia, they're more than just markers beneath her feet.
They mean everything to me, especially since right down that street there is my middle school. I used to walk this way to school. I never would have even thought that my ancestors were enslaved right past where I was walking.
The stones bear the names of those who were once enslaved, along with their birth and death dates. While the 33 stumbling stones in Arlington were placed quite recently, the small plaques have been a permanent part of the cityscape in Germany for decades. Compared to the ones in the US, they are square-shaped and commemorate the victims of the Holocaust, in front of the houses where they once lived. Each stumbling stone is handmade, most of them by one man. Gunter Demnig initiated the German Stolpersteine 23 years ago, with one clear goal in his mind.
And that really was the trigger to bring the names back to where the horror began, because Auschwitz was far away. Who can truly imagine Auschwitz today, especially if you haven't been there yourself? It's unimaginable, but the person is only forgotten once their name is forgotten.
November 9th, Magdeburg, the remembrance of the pogrom night. Flowers are being placed and the Stolpersteine are being polished to honor the memory of the Holocaust victims and keep their history alive. Americans celebrate a similar Memorial Day. On the 19th of June, also called Juneteenth, people spent the day commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. The Stumbling Stones project here was initiated by Tim Aiken. The Arlingtonian approached the Historical Society after noticing the stones on a visit to Europe and drawing inspiration from a newspaper article.
The credit goes to a Washington Post columnist named Michelle Norris, but she wrote a column talking about how Germany, various things that both the government and the citizens of Germany have done to try to come to terms with the Nazi past. And her question, or what she postulated, was, is that not something that we should do here in the United States to address our nation's two sins of treatment of Native Americans and our 200-year history of enslavement?
The stumbling stones have their own unique way of drawing attention in everyday life.
Because they're everywhere and yet very subtle and not in your face, forcing anyone, it's a modest presence. And it tells something about the past that otherwise you would not know about or recognize.
Stumbling stones are not striking. They are supposed to be subtle. Too subtle, some might say. Especially younger generations may simply walk over instead of stumble across, due to their temporal distance to the events. A perspective that the artist Gunter Demnig does not share.
At first, some teachers warned me, saying, don't even bring up that topic. They've heard enough of it. But I can only say that almost everywhere I've experienced the exact opposite.
One example for the younger generation's interest in the stumbling stones is Dell Conyers, the 17-year-old son of Nadia Conyers. Dell is more invested in the project than his friends. However, they still express interest and support.
For me, I have this kind of closer connection to it. Though for them, they think it's cool as well to just see a glimpse of history in the past and see how it's represented.
The 17-year-old also started an ancestry program for Black students at his school. In doing so, he contributes to his generation forming a relationship with their past too.
I think it's really important for history to be told, and there's definitely an importance with maintaining and remembering history, because one thing that I've always seen, or seen as a pattern, is that if you forget something, it'll tend to happen all over again.
Nadia and her son put a special emphasis on their ancestry. Enslaved people in Arlington and across the country could not choose their own path, living a life of unimaginable pain. But descendants like Nadia keep their history alive. Although several generations divide her and the people remembered by the stones, they share a very special connection.
It makes me feel humbled, proud, and on days when I'm, in a mood and don't feel like doing what I have to do so that I can do what I want to do, I remember Charlotte, Margaret, and George, and I say to myself, every day they had no choice but to do what was told. And I have a choice now because of them. And so it makes me hopeful, and it encourages me.
Whether it is an unknown enslaved person in the US or a family of Holocaust victims in Germany, the stumbling stones contribute to each country's memory culture and ensure that history will never be forgotten.